I'm Alexander Gordon Johans, and GHD, growth hormone deficiency, it's hell to live with. But my last video before Theresa May decided to announce general election was what is capitalism, and I intended to follow that up with an explanation of what comes next. And I've had a problem answering the question of what comes next. Because ideologically speaking, I'm a capitalist. I like capitalism. Capitalism makes sense. And the thing is that capitalism makes sense intuitively to me because I don't know if you've experienced autism or if you have it at all, but basically autism means you are an extremely passionate person. You care a lot. And because you care so much, right, you have a set of rules and a logical algorithm that you rely upon as a sort of conceptual anchor so that you're not constantly blown about by the winds of such powerful emotions, right? You rely on logic and rules because you are aware of your own self's very instability. And I support capitalism because, by and large, it accepts that people are assholes and it has rules in place to make sure that these things are balanced, right? Neoliberalism is fucking capitalism over because it is upsetting the natural balance of things, because you have got this sort of incestuous relationship between the media and the big companies and politicians, all of which is seeing that the natural order of capitalism, i.e. that wealth cannot congregate in the hands of the minority, that it must be spread out evenly, right? The natural effects of the capitalistic system are being skewed over by wealth and power and this incestuous relationship. And so I've been raging against this, thinking, what the fuck are we going to do? Neoliberalism is horrible. And I'm not a socialist. I'm a regulated capitalist. I'm a believer that capitalism is a system that works by having rules that dictate what can and cannot happen. It says that people are assholes and you incentivize assholes to do good things for humanity by giving them reason to enable their assholishness to work for the greater good, right? That all these people who are making all this money are generally doing things that benefit humanity by and large. It's just that they're also allowing themselves to get stinkingly rich. Like, at a certain point, capitalism would say, okay, right, the balance has tipped so far in favor of the assholes. Now, democratically, the people are going to take things back. They're going to enact policies that are going to take the money back from the rich people, going to re-energize the economy, and things are going to be okay again, except here we have the disruptive nature of automation. And here is where I have found myself stalling. Because I see no right-wing approach to the issue of post-scarcity. And I believe fundamentally that we are heading towards it, and you are goddamn deaf, dumb, and blind if you can't see it. I speak to right-wing people and I say, hey guys, this is happening, what do we do? And I don't see an answer. what I see is people saying, "Oh, this is not happening. What are you talking about? It's totally fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. What are you talking about? Capitalism will continue. We'll always..." Like they come up with fringe areas saying, "Hey, well, this area is going to be safe from automation." Yeah, because fucking financiers for sports are gonna be is gonna be what we're all gonna do, because 7 billion people on Earth are gonna be able to be celebrities and sportsmen and CEOs and repairmen. Like, what are the vast majority of people gonna do? Because the vast majority of jobs people do are jobs that are about to get automated away. Right? Now, it's all very well and good when we're talking about the vast majority of cases being automated away, because then we can have universal basic income. And either we can have fiat currency and states getting into more debt and more debt and more debt, which, neoliberalism is fine with, because neoliberal ideology has no problem with statism when it benefits the rich. Or, we have socialism, and or regulated capitalism, and we actually tax the rich people for milking the country and the world dry. That's fine. Like, the sort of the transition away from capitalism with the use of universal basic income, and either just increased borrowing, or levying taxes against the rich and cracking down on foreign ownership and breaking up the neoliberal conspiracy. This kind of stuff, that's fine. That's incorporated within the capitalistic ideology. The question is, what the fuck comes next? And I've been thinking about this, and I think the only way we can have anything come next is if we embrace I mean, what is capitalism fundamentally? It's social Darwinism, right? It is a system of exchange that is designed to incentivize competition. And what is competition? It's evolution. And one thing I am reading about here in Rise of the Robots is that a lot of the new wave of automation that's going to strip a lot of white-collar jobs is designed through essentially evolution, right? Capitalism, Darwinism, social whatever, is at the heart of developing the kind of technologies that will end up, well, I suppose ultimately killing off capitalism, right? The capitalistic system of competition has become internalized within the systems that are being developed to replace capitalism. So maybe the answer to what comes after capitalism is internalized capitalism, right? That we have systems designed through capitalistic competition that then enact policies and compete those policies against other kinds of things and monitor the results to see what's best. Maybe, for all this talk of echo chambers and safe spaces and filter bubbles, maybe the future is the counter movement to globalization, in which we essentially have tons of interconnected pockets where, like, say, this thing over here, this will have socialism, this thing over here will have, anarcho-syndicalism, this thing over here will have, ultra Ayn Randian, capitalism, because this is the one area where, like, the CEOs or whatever do their thing, and it's okay because the other areas have their own stuff, so it doesn't matter. And it's like, if you want to go and you want to believe in the American dream or whatever, right, you can go over there and you can be oppressed if that's what you want, but you can get the fuck out of Dodge too, and it's okay. There'd be like a whole ring of like socialist countries around the edges, just to kind of look after people, taking in refugees, all these, you know, white middle class people who naively flock to capitalist country, saying yes, yes, I'm going to make it big, and they get fucked over time and time again, and they sort of they get smuggled out to sort of socialist town, going like, I worked so hard, but the hell, oh my god, the horrible things, I've seen, the things I've done, fuck rich people, and they're just like, yeah, have some 3D printed alcohol, it's fine. I mean, obviously, I'm sort of being a bit of a writer here, drunk writer here, but you know, sort of adding, you know, sort of bullshit anecdotes to this. But you know, maybe the future is sort of lots of little tiny utopias, and maybe you will have, you know, white nationalist town, and like, you know, nobody goes there except the right fucking dickheads. You know, and equally you'll have, you know, violent Marxist town. Maybe that's the future. Maybe the future is is the rejection of globalization, isolationism, protectionism, and everybody just going their own way, doing their own things, and trying to do it as best they can, and all the while we just have big data chunking away, all these algorithms, all these deep learning neural networks chunking away, trying to define the best way to run a country, or the best way to do things. And maybe like what will happen is that you'll just have like, when you have isolationism, and you're restructuring how systems are run, you'll have computers almost passively there, inputting the data, processing the data, and then just gradually, oh, we don't need those civil servants. Oh, we don't need those civil servants. Oh, you know what? That management position, yeah, we don't need that. Turns out we don't need the secretary of that position anymore, because the automations have just got that done, that done, that done, that done. And then maybe, like, I don't know, the entirety of the capitalist sector will be replaced by just machines, and then maybe that sector will be replaced by machines. And that maybe the future is just gradually, like, the state itself becomes automated away. And it's done so in such a way that, like, nobody really notices. Nobody is gonna, like, this is the thing about me, is that I'm terrified of revolution, because I'm among the left, right? I don't hang out in these, you know, right-wing safe spaces. I hang out in left-wing safe spaces, despite the fact that in many ways I'm kind of right-wing, right? You know, I have all these rules that align me with the left, but sort of ideologically, in my heart of hearts, I'm a right-wing guy, you know. I have fetishes about literally owning people. I'm not a nice guy when it comes to it. But I'm in these, you know, left-wing centres, and I'm among people who are like, yeah, we should have guns because we want to violently overthrow the government. And I'm like, yeah, maybe not, mates, maybe not. I mean, okay, that's not many people, and even the people who are saying that are still just like, no, we'll vote for Jeremy Corbyn, it'll be fine. You know? I maybe shouldn't have said that, you know, violent Marxists are in favour of Jeremy Corbyn. Maybe not such a good thing to say on the internet. I'm a little bit drunk. Whiskey and Diet Coke. Oh, it's so good, so good, so good. Jack Daniels and Sainsbury's Diet Coke. Oh, yes. I actually kind of prefer Sainsbury's Diet Coke to Coca-Cola Original Diet Coke. Especially as Sainsbury's Diet Coke does not include aspartame, which is nice. It means I can safely go over my 2 litres of Diet Coke a day. Um, but yeah, and enough about Diet Coke. Uh, yeah, I hang out in these sort of left-wing safe spaces, and I see all this anger and resentment, and I'm constantly like, I'm someone who is in favour of the system, and I'm like, hey guys, I know you're tub thumping about the revolution, but remember how that ended, right? The French Revolution, like, it didn't end well. Like, if it had stopped at the terror, fair enough, but it didn't. Then there was Napoleon, and then there was revolution and counter-revolution, and this, da 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 da, and now there's Marine Le Pen. Like, it's, the genie of revolution can never really be put back in the fucking bottle, and frankly, America is damn fortunate that it did mostly succeed in putting it back in the bottle. I mean, okay, they had a civil war, but the fact that it was a civil war and not the first of many fucking revolutions is kind of, a sign that America's done pretty fucking good about things. Even Trump, not really a threat to American democracy as, maybe he could have been, you know. Still kind of a sign that, America's pretty darn threaded the needle, compared to how things could have gone. And, I'm constantly like worried that the establishment isn't gonna adapt. And I'm like, well, what happens if the establishment doesn't adapt because all these people are angry, and oh my god, there's going to be problems and issues, and if they don't adapt, if the establishment doesn't adapt, then there's going to be revolution and bloodshed, and that never ends well. I'm freaking out. And I'm thinking, like, maybe the answer is that just nobody notices that automation is happening. Maybe just, left-wing governments are voted in, or maybe, right-wing governments decide that they will counter the possibility of left-wing governments getting voted in by saying, hey, we're going to take their ground. We're going to implement a raise to the minimum wage. We are going to push out food banks. We are going to enact policies that will help capitalism, that will stop people from coming for our heads. And, UBI might be implemented, and, like, the demand for violent revolution might be sated before it becomes an issue. And then, we might just, Brexit might not need to happen in order for, general isolationism and retraction from globalism to take hold, right? That, we'll still be part of the World Wide Web, we'll still trade globally, but like people enacting self-rule, and that, Scotland's going to become independent. Scotland's, we're going to see greater and greater devolution of power. Like, maybe you might see, some sort of northern devolution, or southern, or at least a southern devolution, or something like that. And that you essentially have more and more devolution, and sort of like at a global scale, we might not be able to implement proportional representation or whatever, and we might not be able to implement all these different and unique policies. But the moment something new is created for your local area, maybe then, successful lobbying will make a difference. And maybe then, like, yeah, over here in this local pocket, we're going to have a different rule here and a different rule there and a different rule there. And like, automation will just quietly take place in the background. UBI will go on. There'll be different funding schemes. People will apply for disability. They'll apply for job seekers, and at a certain point, governments will realise, you know what, this isn't working. We can't just, like, we're not incentivizing people enough. Like at a certain point, they're gonna realise one way or another that what they're doing so far, neoliberal idealism, isn't actually working. And things will be tough, people will die, and it'll be horrible. But the general path for the future may just be, gradual incremental improvements of isolationism with sort of automation of states happening in the background. And I am someone who is, a firm believer against the idea of electronic voting because it is so subject to fraud. But like, there are states where it is taking place, which I think is stupid. But we don't necessarily need electronic voting to happen within the actual important elections in order for electronic voting with regards to polling or whatever to provide sufficient crunchable data that maybe automation just quietly begins to take over things. Maybe the future of a world beyond capitalism, at least a sort of right-wing approach to things, is that automation takes care of things, right? In that, sort of, if the left is typified by, liberty and idealism for the people against, the wills of esoteric organizations, then maybe modern post-capitalist conservatism will be typified by the stability of society against the will of the individual. And so therefore you will have the implementation of greater and greater levels of automation. And it's just like, well, we don't need to personally oversee, right, what's going on say, the budget for teachers. Like, teachers to a certain extent could be automated because the education thing could to a certain extent be automated because you've already got the testing and algorithmic data that could be inputted. You're already literally having children fill out their test scores in such a way as computers can read them easily, and at a time when computers are getting better at natural language understanding and stuff like that. And the computers do machine learning, and they sort of say, okay, we're gonna make grounds and all this stuff, and yeah, you'd have teachers, you'd have people in the classroom to look over kids because nobody wants their kids raised by HAL 9000, right? You'd want somebody there to make sure your kids don't murder each other. But that when it comes to the actual, management, overseeing of education at the state or council level, that automation might take over that, and similarly, once capitalism is gone and you're providing the resources, you know, you might have automation, or at least kind of analytical algorithms and stuff taking over the distribution of foods. You know, you might have shops still, right? Except that instead of, you know, paying for it with whatever, you would pay for it with your data. You know, you'd say, you know, you'd log in with your credentials, you know, maybe by swiping your identity card, you know, instead of, you know, paying with your instead of paying with your, you know, credit card or whatever, you're scanning with your government mandated, you know, food credit card, and all it would be is basically just a login card that would just go, you know, this is who I am, this is, you know, what I've done, and it would just track your purchasing history. And, you know, the purchasing would in large part be, you know, managed by distribution of public goods, or if not public goods, then it'd be, you know, public goods, it'd be privatized goods paid for out of the public pocket. You know, in the sense that, you know, in the sense that the NHS is still the National Health Service, despite the fact that it's largely being privatised behind the scenes. You know, you might go to the shops and have a very similar experience buying your food. It's just that instead of you working however many hours to buy your food, it'd be, oh, you go down to the job centre or whatever, or you know, you fill out your machines, or just kind of like, there are all sorts of capitalist ways in which, you know, you can try to do to keep capitalism limping on. And, you know, these are like, you know, make work programs in terms of like, hey, we can address, you know, the issue of climate change by having all these, you know, people who are, you know, claiming benefits being, you know, put building wind turbines or solar panels, you know. And certainly I think to a kind of extent that's okay. I mean, if you're gonna have people, you know, claim benefits or whatever, you might as well pay them to, you know, I mean, so long as you're paying them a decent wage, you might as well pay them to build your damn walls or whatever, to build your roads or what have you. Um, but maybe there is a different thing to be considered here, which is that, like, maybe what you might do in some sort of, you know, capitalist post-scarcity is you would still have the sort of the job centre or whatever, but instead of it being you go and you see your, you know, your job advisor, right? What you'd do is you'd go for your, you know, appointment with, you know, with whoever, and they would essentially just give you a number of tasks to check out, and essentially what you would be doing is, what would be happening is that the government would use the massive potential output of its unemployed workforce to help train all these different algorithms, right? It's not getting you to do the work yourself, because frankly, if you're unemployed, you're not going to be a match for the robots anyway, but it's using you to help train them. And it's like, you know, you log in with your account tracks your data, and, you know, maybe in the future, yeah, you know, I mean, it'll take, you know, a few more events, but, you know, give it time, you know, give it the next big 9/11 event to happen in America or whatever, and sooner or later we're gonna be, you know, signing up into universal job match, and we're going to have it tied to our Google and our Facebook or whatever. It'll have access to all of our different online accounts. It'll be able to pass all that data, have an intimate understanding of who we are, and it'll be able to use that data in relation to the various different tasks that we might fill out at the job centre. You know, maybe we might be used to help you know, train future algorithms to understand natural language recognition, or to write things, or to you know, have an effect on, you know, politics or whatever. You know, imagine if, you know, you went to your job center every week and they just asked you to give your opinion on a number of political stories whilst you were, you know, whilst you were logged in with your account that had access to your Google and your Facebook and what have you. And yeah, okay, there are going to be attempts by, you know, companies and, you know, whatever, to do malicious stuff with this data. It's going to be, there are certainly, you know, grounds for this to be misused, but to a certain extent, you know, if you're living in a world of mass data, a world where you are living in a globalized society where, as in, like, information can be shared globally, but you have, you know, localized organizations running things, then, like, you won't be able to get away with authoritarianism to the same extent, right? Because people will just be able to move, right? And or if they can't just easily move because, you know, they've got family or whatever there, you know, certainly they will be able to share, hey guys, these people are doing suspect stuff, right? Like, it's why we're okay with Google collecting our data, but the moment they do anything kind of dodgy with it, you know, their shares take a dump. You know, it's like, you know, United Airlines, we can wreck a company if we have a problem with it. And, you know, it's easy to see this kind of thing, well, not maybe necessarily easily, but this kind of thing could come out of the end of capitalism. Like, you know, at a certain point, actual capital generated by this stuff will no longer exist, or at least enough, there won't be enough of it existing to kind of satisfy people. But, like, the machines will be there, you know, the machines doing the majority of the agriculture to create the food is still going to be there. The machines doing the mining and the drilling, and, you know, the automation running behind the scenes and saying, where are we going to drill next, you know, how are we going to generate the electricity from that? Like, automation is already in so many different parts of the world, and in like, it's about to impact, you know, it's about to impact driving and all these different areas. And at a certain point, people aren't going to be needed, but society is still going to be there, right? I keep worrying, like, what happens when capitalism goes, but, like, I suppose, actually, yeah. When I wrote the story Fuzzy Logic, which is my sort of attempt to write a story about the generation of sentient artificial intelligence, sapient thinking, feeling artificial intelligence. I kind of used as sort of part of the basis of this, or of the narrative and the story, the analogy of, like, this mouse that they had created. Or at least I think this is the case. There was this mouse whereby, I can't remember the names of the people who did it, but basically a massive thing went around the internet for a while of, like, you know, people having managed to grow a, you know, quote unquote human ear on the back of a hairless mouse or a rat or whatever. And, it caused a massive furore at the time, but basically all that happened was that they sort of made a cartilaginous, framework like a human ear, and they essentially um, sewed it underneath the sort of sewed it into the flesh of this, poor rat's back, and they sort of put some, cell food or whatever over the top of it, and they just let the sort of the skin and the sort of muscle grow around the structure and the lattice. And it's like automation is a lattice growing around the the sort of the structure. So the reason, by the way, for the delay between the structure was me trying to think of the precise name for the whatever that was used. Not calcium, but whatever. Um, but they, automation and information technology and all this stuff will be the skin forming around the structure of capitalism. And like, I keep expecting, I keep worrying that it's going to be some massive crash and ideological change, and it's going to be a great big moment of Bada! New age, right? I keep worrying that, like, I can't see the future. There is this phrase in Seventh Doctor books I love called, Eighth Man Bound, which was, about the Seventh Doctor's, phobia, fear of the fact that he couldn't see beyond his eighth incarnation, which, of course, was kind of a joke about the fact that, obviously the Seventh Doctor had been the last Doctor on television, and then there was the Paul McGann special, right? It's like, he's eighth man bound. He can't see beyond Paul McGann because there hasn't been any more televised series. I mean, obviously, I'm not sure of the precise dates and stuff, but this sense of existential fear of just like, I can't see the future, I can't see what comes next. I kind of got that right. I can't see what happens, and almost, the fact that the British pound coin is being replaced by this new 12-sided thing almost represents this, existential fear I have that capitalism is dying and oh my god, what happens next? But like, capitalism isn't going to collapse overnight. I suppose, the sort of the 2008 crash, in a way, we went from, New Labour to suddenly a hung parliament and the coalition, and like that seemed a fairly, that was an event that seemed very much like a sudden, sharp shock heart attack for capitalism. Right? That was an event that seemed very much like, oh dear, just like, and everything stops. But I don't think in reality we're going to see that, because what we're witnessing in terms of the way automation is taking place is that automation is hollowing out, right? So you've still got the front end staff, right? There are still people in the banks and and in the fast food restaurants and the supermarkets, right? There are still some people there. No matter how much automation takes place, there is still going to be some level of somebody there, right? Their job may be drastically de-skilled. They may, in effect, just be there because they want somebody to, open up the store, or just to, look pretty or whatever. But there will be some level of staff there when you go out into the world. And equally, there will be the CEO running the business. But pretty much everything in between is going to go away, right? The number of staff on the front line is going to go away. The number of CEOs in the world is going to go away. And, the number, and in the middle, we're seeing this hollowing out of the middle class as all the different middle class jobs are being done away with through employment. We're seeing all of these minimum wage jobs being done away with. We're seeing de-skilling, and where you've got de-skilling and specialization, you've also got increased likelihood of automation, and it's like calcification. It's automation taking over the roles from people. The system is there as the lattice, and automation takes the roles in between. And maybe, the future then is not some great climactic boom, capitalism is gone. Oh my god, the rules that structure the world are gone. What happens next? But capitalism is still there. It's just that now the machines are governed not by CEOs, they're governed by people, right? And it's not even like that's going to be a sudden thing. It's going to happen, gradually. There are going to be, there's going to be, the next terrorist attack that's going to drive that's going to drive politicians to say, well, we need your Google account, we need your Facebook, we need this, we need that. It's going to be, the next economic crash, the next recession, that has you logging in with those things when you're down at the job center. It's going to be the next thing, the next economic crash, the next recession that, that then requires the universal basic income to be distributed through the same sort of job seekers allowance. And it's going to be restructuring of, hey, instead of you having to apply for jobs because there aren't any now, instead you're going to be training algorithms. And it's just gradual. It's not 1 minute capitalism is there and the next it's gone. It's that, staff are de-skilled, and the welfare state expands and expands and expands, and the information accrued expands and expands and merges, and it's used to spy on you, to neutralize threats to the state, but at the same time it's used to advance automation that will itself remove the need for the state. And eventually it's just gonna be people. And maybe in the future, you won't even necessarily need to vote for political parties so much as just train, you'd vote for X person who would then go have their sort of things things. Yes, how very apt, but how very descriptive. That they would have their online activity and their sort of political profile scanned by a sort of computer matrix that would do the sort of the voting for them, and that they would get to oversee, and they'd say, well, you know, I wouldn't vote for that, I wouldn't vote for that, and like maybe that's the future. Maybe the future is just gradually less and less people being involved at all levels of the world, but like the world keeps on turning, that there isn't any great climactic, oh no, capitalism is gone, what happens, what do we do? It's just less and less people are involved and required to do things at each and every level, and that like the effort required to do X or Y just gets less and less, and that maybe, you know, neoliberalism and fascism having it out right now so doggedly, and you know, socialism and all this stuff, maybe that's just a fucking distraction, because this stuff is happening, right? Technology is happening right now. It is taking away jobs right now, and everybody's ignoring it. Everybody is ignoring it. Nobody thinks it's important, because what about the climate? You know, what about, you know, the oppression of this group or that group? What about, you know, what about these people facing this kind of oppression, and these people who are facing this kind of poverty, and what about these bad people, and what about that kind of bad people? And everybody's kind of ignoring automation. Everybody just doesn't give a shit, because fuck it. Because, you know, either you don't believe it's important because you don't think it's an issue, because you don't have an understanding of how it works, and you don't have an understanding of what's going on, right? Like, it's not important to you, so you don't bother to do the research, and so therefore you don't see that it's important to you. It's, you know, it's like the whole thing of, you know, if you don't bother to read up about politics, you don't care about politics because, well, you're not seeing all the ways in which politics affects you. You know, if you don't read up about, you know, automation, you're not going to see the ways in which automation is affecting the world, so it's not going to seem an issue to you. And, you know, if you do think automation is a big thing and you do think it's going to affect the world, at a certain point you feel like it's so obvious, well, of course people are going to do things to counteract it, you know. And it's like, I constantly hear about the universal basic income. Maybe that's just because I'm within my special, you know, filter bubble of sort of, you know, vaguely left-wing people who also feel right-wing at heart, and are at the same time trying to marry the two together. So I'm hearing about universal basic income because if you're a left-wing person with right-wing sensibilities, you want to keep capitalism going whilst at the same time making sure the poor are looked after. So you're going to want to have universal basic income. And I suppose ultimately all of this comes down to a sentiment that I shared on Facebook sort of tonight, well, I suppose this morning now, since it's now 6 a.m, where I said, I believe fundamentally in free will, but I also believe that with enough data you can predict what someone is freely going to choose. And I don't see any inconsistencies with that. And I think that, you know, maybe that being the case, we aren't going to see a difference. We are going to have capitalism in some sense continuing forever. It's just that capitalism is going to function by means of Darwinian evolution within algorithms designed to better mimic and replicate human behavior, or even be better than humans. I mean, this is why self-driving cars are such a great improvement. They're not about replicating how human drives. They're about being better than humans by taking to the task of how to drive in and of themselves. And, you know, maybe one of the big turning points of, you know, the post-capitalist world will be the question of how we choose to run governments, because sooner or later we are basically just gonna be deciding the MPs or the prime ministers or the presidents or whatever, just the people who oversee the algorithms. And it might be that the people who oversee the algorithms don't actually have any say over the algorithms per se, but are just there to train the algorithms. And maybe we will reach a point where it's like, where we are faced with the question of, do we get away with the algorithms altogether, or do we keep the algorithms representative of the people, or do we have the algorithms try to solve humanity, solve the problems faced by the world in their own fashion, right? Without humans stepping in. And it's not going to be, you know, the sci-fi conceit of, well, how we want peace, computer, and the computer goes, oh, well, I'll kill all humans then because you're all vermin. No, it's going to be that, you know, this specific computer, you know, monitors test scores, and it wants to optimize the production of better test scores, so it tries out different approaches. And, you know, you can have this computer that's going to be, you know, optimizing the better care of patients, and that's going to, you know, take over, you know, it's going to take in data from all these different personalized, you know, care bots that are taking care of this patient and that patient, and it's going to be like, okay, how do I distribute resources that I take care of all these patients? And then you can have, you know, this one that's like, how do I better take care of our nation's borders, you know, and obviously to varying degrees you'll have more or less oversight, at least to begin with. But like, once all these different algorithms handling this or that thing are sufficiently trained, you know, what role is the sort of the person they're gonna be? You know, I keep worrying about neoliberalism and about the establishment, but in some senses they're a fucking sideshow, because they don't really run the world, or at least they're not gonna for very much longer. What's going to be running the world is the robots, and it's not going to be anything malicious. It's not going to be a grand takeover. We are voluntarily superseding control of the of the world to the robots, because by and large, in the vast majority of the cases, robots run it better than humans. And it's not that the robots are alive or anything like that. It's just that they are tools, and they have functions, and they do those functions well. It's just going to be that at a certain point, the tools are running society. So what do we do? What do? You know? I mean, I think the title of this video is going to be What Comes Next, and I suppose the answer is, I still don't fucking know. Maybe this is what comes next for society in terms of automation, but in terms of what comes next to society, in terms of how we adapt to living in a world where the majority of people actually don't work, I'm really not sure. Maybe the answer is that we just play a lot of video games. Maybe we are courted in terms of entertainment media. Um, One thing for sure, though, is that I am reading through this book and I am fast realizing that I underestimated how powerful automation is already. Um, and that's me, the fucking, massive nerd saying it. I don't know what happens. I don't know what we do. I just know that we're heading for a bold new future. And so far, the majority of the right-wing people I speak to are just so fucking ignorant about it. And like, guys, you're letting the side down by pretending that automation isn't going to affect capitalism. You are ceding the future to the socialists and the communists. You gotta up your games. You gotta figure out what next for the right wing when post scarcity happens, when we move beyond capitalism. You know, pretending that somehow the world is gonna be filled with people training their fucking hearts out just to get shitty fucking jobs at the fringes of society is ridiculous. Right? Like so many of these jobs that that these right wing people say won't be automated when it seems like they probably will be. So many of these jobs that these right wing people say won't be automated are not a sufficient basis for societal employment. And so many of these jobs will be radically affected if the majority of employment is done away with through automation. Right? Certainly large swathes of the service sector can be automated away very shortly. Certainly large swathes of, manual labour can be automated away and already has been automated away. Certainly large swathes of agriculture has been automated away. Basically all knowledge work can be automated away. We are talking about a world where the vast majority of jobs are very soon, within the next couple of decades, going to be automated away. And like, your job, if it isn't automated away, your ability to live on that is going to become radically different when, the majority of the population is also competing for that job. And that's what we're seeing time and time again, is that a surplus of workers affects the wage, right? This is why ultimately CEOs can make so much money. This is why ultimately MPs can make so much money, because there are so few of them, right? And it's like, we shouldn't be. The more automation takes place, the more all these expensive jobs at the periphery that, quote unquote, can't be automated away will be drastically de-skilled, and they will drop radically in terms of price, and they won't be sufficient, right? capitalism as we know it is gonna die, and society, one way or another, has to adapt. And so far, we're just sticking our heads in the fucking sands going, oh, everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be okay. But it's not. And the thing is, everybody keeps blaming this or that group, and it's like, neoliberals, immigrants, Muslims, racists. And it's no, we are facing a foe that can't be stopped. We're facing technological progress and the increasing redundancy and lack of relevance of the human within work. Right? What do humans do when there is no great motive to chase after? And it's all very well saying, well, we'll have to find another way, well, we'll have to do this, well, we'll have to do that, well, there'll be this job or that job. But, like, what happens if and when post-scarcity happens? How does society cope? How do people cope? We need to answer that question collectively as a society, and we need to start talking about it. We can't just keep pretending it's not going to be an issue. We can't just keep pretending that this or that boogeyman is all we need to think about. Because those boogeymen, they ain't going to be there forever. Whereas this problem, it's heading to hit us squarely in the face, and we are going to face the existential dread of our own irrelevancy to society, and we need to figure something out. Because so far, we don't have any good ideas. The only ideas there are ideas that a guy drew up in the 1700s. That's not good. That is not good. When the only ideas we have are fucking ancient, then we are not in a good place. Because we aren't thinking about this. And we need to. Thank you for watching my main channel. Please remember to leave a like, favourite and comment. Shout out to the dislike club. Subscribe if you like what you saw, and share if you know someone who might be interested in the contents of this video. If you would like to help ensure more videos get made, there are a few options available to you. You can whitelist this channel in your adblock software to ensure what ad revenue you provide has a chance of making its way to me. If you sign up to make a regular monthly donation through my Patreon, then you will get to watch a selection of videos available exclusively to my Patreon supporters over at my Patreon page. One-off donations are payable through PayPal, or if that doesn't suit your sensibilities, you can gift items through Steam or Amazon via my public wish lists. Obviously, I don't expect anything, and the vast majority of my videos will remain free and ad-supported. All that remains is to say Trump should be impeached, the genocidal must be stopped, and institute universal basic income now.